Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon for our conversation today, looking at sort of single view of data, single view of customer, those kind of topics. Yeah, I'm joined today by a few of my Head Forwards colleagues. We'll go through some introductions in a moment. So I'll kick that off. So I'm Owen. I'm a product manager here at Head Forwards. Embedded within our Cornwall Council contract at the moment, and a lot of the work we've been doing recently has been around single view of resident, single view of customer. So got some stuff to feed in from that point of view. We've also joined today by Kath, who's a business analyst on our global corporate. We're also working on single view of data in a slightly different vein, which is quite interesting. So we'll see whether there's some commonalities. Neil as well, another BA that we have on the same contract. And then, yeah, honoured to be joined by Craig, who's one of the co-founders here at Head Forwards and an Agile evangelist, and has some interesting insights on this topic as well. So we'll probably just jump straight in, guys. So we've kind of tried to break this down into a few different segments. We'll sort of walk around the topic of single view, kind of what it means and how to get started, and data and security in those sort of areas. We welcome questions, and we probably welcome questions throughout. So I think you should be able to drop that into any of the comments or chats that you see wherever you're streaming this, and we'll look to pick them up as we go, but we'll also leave a little bit of time at the end for any questions at that point as well. Cool. So we're going to kick off with sort of what single view kind of means in a way. So what does single view mean to us, and sort of why do people want it? It seems to be quite a we're seeing it more often. I think it's a key topic for a lot of organizations now, is we've got lots of data and we want a single view of whatever it is that we're doing, and we've worked through, particularly with a couple of our clients, helping to solve that problem. So yeah, I'm gonna just give each of us a chance. I might start with yourself, Neil, if that's okay, in terms of sort of what problems are people trying to solve through having a single view, do we think, and why do people want it?
Sure. So I've obviously got my own experience from the current account I'm on, and a couple of others in my previous life. All of that is very much, from my experience, is all about getting a better handle and a much more aggregated view of the customer, so that you can provide a more joined up customer service. So that's my experience, and we can drill into that a bit. But I thought, well, what else is out there? I think there's a lot. If you read stuff about single views, there's a lot about marketing benefits. So collating the data so that you can pull together more consistent, more personal campaigns, and then driving sales from that. But the bit from our side is very much driving better customer service, providing. I can talk about a couple of the examples. So the main one, the current one, is I was accidentally put onto a call with a business-to-business customer of our current client, who was grumbling that I have to log into 4 different portals to deal with your 4 different business units that I'm paying good money to for their services. But then if I have problems with them, I have to go onto the different portals and raise different tickets in different systems. I have no way of seeing a joined up view of what I am paying for, right? That was, I think, the primary business problem we are dealing with. But elsewhere, you'd see an internet bank. Classic one would be, I'm a customer of an internet bank. Why can't I see all the accounts that I've got money in, or I'm paying money into, if it's a loan or whatever? And equally, and this is the flip side of it, is I also, as that customer, I expect the person I'm talking to have the visibility of the same data, the same joined up information. So I'll be, banks is quite, well, some banks have had a common problem of having all their back end systems. You've probably been into branches and see, once upon a time, where you've gone into branches and the poor person behind you've got your app and going, what about all this? And they're going, oh, well, I've just log into 4 different apps. So yeah, it's very much from my perspective, my experience, the single view enables a much better customer experience and a customer service experience.
Yeah, for sure. Kath, did you want to add any of your thoughts onto?
Yeah, so I'm working on the same account as Neil is, which is a global corporate large client. Prior to when I worked at Head Forwards, before that I worked for another global large corporate client, and I think historically they've grown through acquisition. So therefore there are quite often multiple back office systems and processes in place. So operationally, like Neil alluded to, it's really hard to support that client. So not only is it a bad client experience from them having to deal with multiple portals to get, data from one client, right? They're paying one bill, but then and having to log into multiple portals to get that to achieve and get the data they need. But operationally as well, we're hamstrung on the back end because again, multiple portals, multiple systems, multiple back office, CRMs, billing systems, all of that stuff that the end operational user has to battle with to be able to serve that client. So not only is it from a client experience, but also from within the business trying to do your job properly and be able to serve that client in a quick and efficient way is really hard. So yeah, that's where that single view ultimately helps operationally and from the client experience as well.
Yeah, that's great. I agree with that. That's great. Craig, have you got any thoughts to add?
I think the guys have covered it. I mean, the value, ultimately the value is for the customer. So whether that's through the customer service experience or through a customer portal, or the customer service maybe using an operator portal, but they all still want to have a single view in order to be really efficient in doing and giving the customer the experience that they want. I do think it is interesting. The concept of single view isn't necessarily about the customer, but in the end, it is about that customer in the end and giving them that value. But it could be about something else. I mean, we talk about a view of bank accounts. Neil mentioned there. So, but it could be, we talk about citizen. I mean, maybe citizen's very close to a customer, but there could be also patient within a health system or an asset. And certainly, if we talk about the work we do for some of our large managed services clients, they're talking about configuration items and resources and machines and things like that, and it's value in there in looking at having a single view of those things. And the single view is basically a collation of the attributes of that thing, the customer or the virtual machine or the patient or whatever, or the citizen or whatever it may be, along with a whole host of other data, which is the interactions that entity, whatever it is, has had with the business itself or even wider than that. And it's bringing all of that disparate data together to enable the customer to have a really great experience, and that is then business value for the business that's or the organization that is looking for that single view for.
Yeah, that's great. It's very similar, excuse me, to the what we've been doing at the council as well, actually. So yeah, we've got a sort of a overarching strategy we've been working towards around single view of the customer, which is single view of the resident, as you mentioned, Craig, and that sort of, it's got two angles to it. One is sort of, as Kath and Neil both mentioned as well, which is around improving the customer experience. So it's not uncommon for a customer, particularly a council where a council is like lots of different organizations in one. I think there's like waste and council tax and then social care and other elements, and quite often all of these services will have their own like sort of back office systems and associated resident facing portal technology, which can often mean that as a resident you might need to remember 4 or 5 different logins even just to kind of do different kind of interactions. And so yeah, when we talk about single view there, it's about the data, but it's also about improving the resident's experience. So just give me one set of login credentials where I can log in, and you're showing me all the information from these different systems behind the scenes in a single view. But then also the single view of the customer is used to help decision making within the council as well. So where we've done stuff around single view of demand or single view of vulnerability, single view of debt, I think as well, that's helped kind of the council make kind of important decisions as well based on that data. And so they're the sort of things we've seen from that point of view.
There's also, Owen, sorry, just there you touched upon it there, but almost from the customer point of view of that, the burden of having to remember all the logins or what have you. But at the same time, if an organisation's got multiple data repositories that are all containing the same information, then then they're not very efficient or economical with that. They're maintaining that data in whatever 4 or 5 or more different places. It's a lot of duplication of effort, and
for sure,
you can save money and become more efficient if you have a single view.
Yeah, that's sort of single view of customer. I guess the other bits we're probably going to be talking a lot about the single view of the customer in a lot of places, but the other bits that we've done previously as well, isn't it, for other clients, is around sort of that single view of my sort of assets as well. So the concept of single view of like my cost and utilization, even of maybe my cloud services, for example. If I've got bits of tech from different vendors, which a lot of modern organizations, especially large ones, will have a sort of hybrid estate with bits of kit from different places. It's where can I just log into one place and look at all of that utilization and cost information rather than having to log into each provider's portal. So we've done bits there historically as well, haven't we? Cool. All right. We've covered quite a bit there. I mean, Neil, did you want to go into any more detail about what it's looked like for the global corporate in terms of some of the detail, what we've delivered in that space?
Well, we can do, yeah. So I guess this comes down to what's the approach, right? So where we are right now, it's probably a sort of hybrid solution, right? So I think if I go back and say, well, how would I approach, what are the options for building a single view? You've kind of got two ends of the spectrum. One is the single view is a front end that aggregates lots of different sections of data from different back-end systems on the one. So that's the sort of simple version, right? And then on the other hand, you actually genuinely look at creating an integrated technical architecture, data architecture, and you start working on cleaning data, getting it all integrated, removing the duplication that Craig mentioned earlier, and then having views onto that nice clean data set. And then you can do all sorts of whizzy things and reporting and marketing and everything else off the back of it. So I'm yet to see an implementation of the end state of that. I think most companies will be somewhere, either starting at the one end, which is the front end views on aggregated views, or where I think where we are now for our clients is we have got a unified front end portal, both for the customer facing and for the operator facing, and then we're bringing in different levels of integration, right? We've got common portal apps that then suck in common data from an integrated technical and data architecture, so assets or configuration items, users, customers, and so on. But at the same time, we are also adding, we're bringing in views from different parts of the business that are actually sourced directly from those back-end systems. And similar, I mean, Kath can talk about some of the support, there's operational support processes, ticketing, and so on, in more detail around how that works, because I think it's, while the client has got multiple different services desks around the world, and they have historically been all on their own service desk platforms and software and different entry points for those, and the client's going on a major journey to bring those together towards a much smaller number, and certainly from a single one for the client.
Yeah, so I think that's a kind of good point. So taking a step back from where you start, I think the idea of a single view originates from as a result of a problem, right? There's something that's wrong within the business that you've identified, or an issue that needs solving, and ultimately you kind of end up going, well, look, that could be solved by aggregating and having that single view. And so then you want to take the kind of approach, I think, of defining that scope, right? Nailing down the scope of what systems, what it is you're trying to, that issue that you're trying to solve, what the systems does it touch, the processes it touch, the people, and what are you trying to achieve at the end of it? And then iterating over it, right? So looking at the as is kind of state of the systems, the sources of the data, the structure of the data, and kind of keeping an eye on where you want to end up the to be, right? So what is that? What is going to be the source of the single view? And then you've got your gap analysis, right? So you look at the data as is, you look at where you want to get to, and then you start mapping across. So so you have like a defined, almost like a common data structure in your to be source system, and you start mapping across. So then you get that common view. And with the experience that Neil and I have had of various service divisions within the one client, all doing something slightly differently in their source systems, having that common structure that they have to push their data into so that we get that common view within the kind of single view platform that the portal that we're working on, is really helpful, right? There's obviously room for maneuver within that data structure because it's not a one size fits all, but you make the structure defined, but within there's room to wiggle, right? To encompass everyone's data, but the actual structure itself. And then within the portal where that data resides and is being, viewed and sourced, then you can layer over again your common UI, right? So because all the data is kind of within that defined structure, then your UI becomes more uniformed as well. You talk about the data, whatever it is, in a common terminology as well, and you start to bring together those disparate sources of data into that common view. So yeah, that was a long-winded view of saying, look at the as is, eye on the to be, map it across, and off you go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, that sort of oversimplifies it in a way. So that's
totally
good. Yeah, because it's key, isn't it? We sort of moved into the next section we're going to talk about, which is sort of how you get started in that data analysis and scope, as you say, the looking at where all this data sits at the moment. And again, in the council, for example, I think we had over 600 different sources of data, and all in various different levels of kind of quality, which we're going to move on to shortly. But it's kind of like, it's a huge thing, isn't it? But it's like working out where to start, I guess, which kind of moves on to the next question, which Neil, or maybe yourself, Craig, can talk about, which is this, like creating a single view is a large project, but like, how do we start and how do we deliver that? I'm thinking, is it better to do it as an iterative process? Could it be big bang? We've got agile principles in there. If anyone got any reflections there in terms of how to just get started when you're talking like, we've got 600 sources of data, how do we start? How are we going to deliver this?
I think I'll allow Neil to answer that. But I think there's something interesting and it relates to the question you've just asked as well, and relates to both what Kath and Neil mentioned, which I think is, I don't think we're going to talk right now about how do you start it, but actually you're starting from now, which is, and now could be, well, actually we've got all these disparate systems, or now could be, well, we've got this much is already is aggregated together into the unified view, but we've got this new system that we've just acquired this other company, and they've got a completely different system. We've now got to, so I do think there is something, you can't just build this system and then leave it and it's perfect forever. In fact, almost it's getting stale straight away. It's all, fundamentally, it comes down to data, and you need to always have good data there, and data in a form that is really valuable for that single view. And therefore that dev and operations, or DevOps mentality, and continuing to look after this system, it starts, maybe we'll talk about how you start. If you're starting fresh right now, we'll start about that, but we'll talk about that, but it continues after that point and is an ongoing thing. So maybe that then answers part of your question, or at least gives my view on it, which is like an iterative approach is the right approach, and that is a continual exercise. But I'll allow Neil now to answer your question. Where do you start, Neil?
Yeah, well, I think Kath stole some of the thunder in that you start with a business problem, right? You're not going to spin up a project just to go, well, I want a single view.
Yeah.
You're going to say, I've got this problem, I need to address it. And then basically those are you, and then I guess you say, right, once you say, so we've talked about, we didn't have a unified view of the customer, right? And that was causing customer service problems. So I think a couple of years back, I'm sure, Kath, even internally, the client's senior management was saying things like, well, we don't have many customers that have divisions, have services from lots of different divisions.
Yeah.
I think, and doing this work is actually identifying
Actually, you do.
It's quite a few. It's just that as a result of the various silos or whatever, organizations, divisions, the data wasn't shared, so there wasn't a common view. So I think actually, in between, the reason why the project got any traction is because there was enough data to say, no, you really do. Otherwise, I don't think we've gone. But once you've said, right, that's the problem, then it's a case of, I think we'll probably ask Craig to chip in a bit more. But basically, what's the biggest part of the problem? What's the bit we can land? What's the quickest, easiest, and that's going to hit a good bang for buck while you build this out, right? And don't let don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right? So if iteration one is you start down the road of creating your standards, whatever, creating the common portal with a single login, but then go, actually, we're just going to bring in a couple of services for now from different places, and we'll only just surface put a UI on their existing data. Is that good enough to go live with? And if the answer is yes, then that's what you do, and then you just iterate out. And I think that's where the guys we're doing work for have been quite good at, getting the right balance between waiting for it to be ready, waiting to get enough data aggregated and integrated versus just getting something which is already an improvement for customers out there and up and running.
And I think from our side, sorry, Owen, just to add in, I think Neil and I are lucky on the project that we're on in that we have some really strong leadership in this. So we have our product owner has very clear. He's technically savvy. He's business savvy. We're really lucky in that he has both. He has a foot in both camps, and he provides that really strong guidance for us, for our teams to be able to deliver. He's got buy-in from top down, right? So it makes it easier that way, and traction and business buy-in to get this project to be successful. But that strong technical leadership has been really, really useful on our side.
Yeah, that's key to getting started as well, isn't it? Someone to make those decisions and to pull the right people together, I guess, at the right level of the organisation to get them on board. Yeah, for sure.
And you need to bring these people along, right? You can't bring them in at the end and go, ta-da, there you go. Off, you have to. It's that kind of soft skills that we've talked previously before about that are really key, right? In managing people and managing the change and getting people on board with the idea and what you're trying to achieve. And bringing people along with you rather than, doing it in a silo and as a technical little project and then just, throwing it over and going, see you later. It's that whole kind of working with everyone in the business to bring them along for the ride.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's something that we've seen at the council as well, actually. So we've obviously taken that iterative approach too, and so just trying to think of the stuff that we've put out to residents. So we've got the sort of the portal, the resident portal. I mentioned earlier about the many different logins you might have to remember at the moment as a resident, but we've done an integration into one of the other sort of the planning portal. So you can both from a single sign-on point of view, so it's just easier to get to, but also where we're showing information from that system into the into the My Cornwall portal. So showing you, like, even just like the nearest 5 planning applications to your address, rather than having to dig into that. We're presenting that on the dashboard now. And then if you want to do something like comment on one of those applications, you click it and it signs you in and takes you off to another system, but all quite seamlessly. And we're sort of proving the value and proving the sort of the art of the possible, if you like, with other systems and others. And when you're working with other third-party systems, it's varying in terms of the level of complexity to achieve some of this stuff. It's not all an even playing field. We've seen like a lot of systems, for example, that might have been in place at an organization for a long time that they've been using, that has tons of data in it. If they've only really been using it in that application and have never really had to consider getting the data out via something like API, then they might not be, we find stuff where they might not be paying for the API access to their data yet. And so there's then like all these steps that need to be considered around, okay, we want to get the data out of that system into a central place so we can start to kind of, cleanse it and get it tied in with other data from other systems. But just getting that access can sometimes be a challenge. And that's before then you even get to the kind of the quality of the data and that sort of thing. So when you're talking about a number of different systems, specifically when they're all provided by different organizations, it is hard to kind of get that common integration approach, probably. That sort of leads us on a little bit to the data quality piece, actually. So we're coming into sort of data and security sort of thoughts now. So yeah, I'll just continue briefly. So what we've also seen, I mentioned it earlier on, is that when you've got 600 plus source systems, that data quality is going to be really varied. So like I've mentioned, some of it might be sat in, for example, a CSV or a spreadsheet at this point in time. You know what I mean? And then other things might be a huge complex system that's really hard to get the data out of because we haven't got the API access to it, or the API has just been not written in a friendly way because we haven't written it and it's been written by another company and the documentation might not be great. So that can present challenges to the development team. So it is like it's like an ongoing journey, as has been touched on, I think. So where we started was to find the system that we can most easily integrate with, but that would also provide a good bang for buck and value. But we know we've got some sort of gnarly ones coming up where it's like, oh, we know the API access isn't great there, and it's going to be a bit of a challenge. And there's then commercial conversations to have with the supplier of those systems to kind of be able to get that data out. But in some of the source systems, when we're talking like CSVs and spreadsheets, the first step has been to systemize that spreadsheet that's kind of shouldn't be on a spreadsheet and is kind of creaking at the seams, systemizing that by giving them some sort of digital solution or an application to start managing that specific process at the organization. And then at that point, then we'll work out, right, getting that data into the sort of central space where we can then get it into that single view piece. So again, that's a couple of steps that we need to do before you can just go and get that data, chuck it into a single view space, and we're off. Have anyone else got any sort of thoughts or experiences with varying levels of data quality or access to data, how you do these integrations?
Yeah, so I guess from our perspective, again, Neil, because of these, but it's one company, right? But the client is across many different back office systems. So you come to bring it together and suddenly you've got 10 versions of one client. It's like, right, okay, you need someone within the business that owns the data to say, right, this is the definitive record, or and then, or actually, is it possible to condense them into one account? Because quite often that's not possible either. So how do you handle that going forwards? Which I think you're pretty hot on, Neil, aren't you, with the number of multiple accounts we have for clients?
Lots, yeah. So I had the joy of going through a deduplication exercise last month. So that was fun. Which is basically just saying, is this a duplicate? Is it the same client, or is it a subtly different client with a similar name? All of that sort of stuff. The other thing, so yes, there's a cleansing attitude in terms of genuinely mapping things up, and you do need the business to join with you and help you out with that. You've got a fun of different parts of the business. So you've got different service divisions, but also then different geographical regions that own their customers, and then have, so you've got different views of this client that belongs to APAC, this belongs to EU. Okay, but the name's the same. So There's that, and let's say once you get that agreed, then and you can say, right, this client is genuinely this client. It's a big global corporate client because we're looking after business to business customers. So it's a really large client. It's got users wanting to log in from all over the world. At that point, we're dealing with data security, right? So can the guys in London see the data for their client, but that lives in, for the data in Singapore, right? For example. And the answer is, in a lot of cases, no. So then we have to go work around how do we manage that? And we're just putting access control capabilities, wrapping that around the different parts of their data. Even for customer end users, and then internally we have to do the same for can the guys in Singapore, the operator users in Singapore see the clients in Europe or America or whatever. So that whole access control thing becomes a really big issue. It's a compliance issue. Big clients quiz us on it, but also it's obviously, with GDPR and things like that, we need to be designing security into the data from the get-go.
We've got absolutely similar challenges and obviously considerations around both of those points in the council as well. Again, if we go back to single view of the resident, and we've got this concept that we want to end up where you've got a single login as the resident and you can see all the information and all the requests you might have made to the council at different times in one place. But we have to be so careful about what information we expose in that portal to that user, because like you say, sometimes some of the systems just don't have enough what do you call it, enough of those matching points to have like 100% confidence, or as close to as you can get, that this is the same person. So this person's information I've found in this system over here, you need to be like rock solid sure that that is the same person, that if we're going to now display that in the portal to that user next time they log in. Otherwise, like you say, from a GDPR and all sorts of sort of data compliance points of view, that could be a right nightmare. So yeah, having to be very cautious about that and making sure that we're only showing sort of trusted information and information that we've got confidence in to the resident themselves.
And that's sorry.
No, that's it.
Just what you're saying. Just while I think about it. So we talked about the sort of sliding scale of types of how you're aggregating it, right? So at the point when you're aggregating 5 different back-end systems and just putting their UI up, elements of the UI or some of their data up, it becomes a lot harder, as you described, to control what that end user can see or not, right? But whereas once you've aggregated it into a central data pool and put ACLs on all the various entities or whatever, it becomes much easier to provide a common and holistic set of access control rules on that data.
I think there's 2 aspects really, isn't there? There's the technical side of it, technically how you can do it, and cut and splice data and permission models and access control, which is, doable, fine. I think the really tricky part is getting the business to define what is the right record, or what records should be merged together, or what clients are actually dupes and which ones aren't. And that's the kind of slightly more challenging part. Technically we can do it, right? We can layer things, we can, like you say, add ACLs, we can put permission models in, we can create roles that allow you to see certain parts of the data and not other parts of the data, and whether that's internal or external. But it's actually getting the business, from our perspective, I don't know about Owen as well, but to get the business to own and define what is actually a dupe and what isn't a dupe in terms of the data, that's the slightly more challenging part.
Yeah, sure.
I find.
And then the related note is that, once you've identified, if you're on the whole iterative delivery, you've got to get the business to think positively or around risk, around, well, am I only going to go live when I've solved all of these problems for everything, or or can I go live with XYZ system because, as you've said, Owen, I've got confidence that they all match. We know that. So, right, let's do that and then move on.
Sure. The other similarity you mentioned there around, especially around like that sort of role-based access, is again, if I just sort of think about what we've been doing, is the single view of the customer. I've talked about it quite a bit in terms of like that logged in experience with the resident and getting them to see more information in a single space. But one of our key customers is also like the contact centre at the council, who are obviously then taking phone calls from residents sort of all day, and sort of giving them a more just more information at their fingertips so that they're able to better support the customers. So if they've got someone on the phone, they can see more historical conversations, not just like that they've had with the contact center, but oh yeah, I can see that you requested that service last week. Let me find out what's going on with that for you. But again, that role-based bit is key because there's certain bits of information that's not appropriate for the contact center agent to actually be able to see. So particularly if you're thinking about things in the social care space, for example, or something that's a little bit more sensitive like that, then you want to empower the contact center agents so they can provide a better level of service to the customer, but without giving them access to too much information that they really for their role shouldn't be able to see. So yeah, we're having to come across those challenges as well, which is like, you want to bring this together so we've got a central record of a resident, but making sure that only the right bits are visible to the right people.
Yeah.
Cool. We've spoken then quite a bit there about sort of just referring to some of my notes, data quality. We've talked a bit about integration patterns. Feel free to jump in if there's anything you want to add on that, and the security stuff as well. And feel we've covered that.
I think the security is an interesting point, because there's bringing it all together into one repository, although I know that's maybe another conversation point whether it is one repository or not, but it means then you've got complete control over all of that data. So you can put your RBAC system in place and make sure, and it's one system that covers the security. So it's one place, not multiple places where you're having to think about the security of the data. On the flip side of that is actually then it becomes a bigger target as well, which just means you know from a if other people want to try and, it's like, oh well, that's got all the crown jewels, we're going to go there. But then that just ups your game again to make sure that you've got a really robust security in place in and around that data. So I think it's it's really good.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we'll move on to the next bit, which is interesting, which is consistency of language. Is something, especially when we're talking about lots of different systems, where I guess the same thing can be referred to in different ways. But Kath, have you got some insights into that area for us?
Yeah, so what we found on our side is the same thing can be referred to by multiple names depending on who you talk to within the business, right? So prime example, we have clients, or we have accounts, or we have companies, but they're all notionally the same thing. It's someone that's buying a service from us. Similarly, that client, company, account, whatever you want to call them, could have resources, or it could be assets, or it could be configuration items. Again, it's all the same thing under the hood, but each service division, each service within the same business could call it any number of things, which just brings confusion, right? Especially as you're bringing it into one view. So I think it's always key, and we had this sort of from top down, is to get that common terminology, right? Doesn't matter what it's called in the source system. In this single view, this is an asset is now going to be called a configuration item. That's it. We refer to them as configuration items. We refer to them as clients. So clients buy services that consist of configuration items. And we also have another thing with ticketing. So they, if a client has an issue with something, a service, they want to raise a ticket, we also have, it could be a ticket, could be a case. It's the same thing, but we need to get uniformity around what we call these things to make everyone's lives easier, right? So it's almost like you want to create a glossary of terms. This is what it was, but now this is what we refer it to. And then bringing that in to the UI, right? So in the menu items, we only have cases, we only have clients, we only have what was the other thing? I can't remember what I said now, but it's it's bringing it into the UI so that it's uniform. And I think also when you're having internal discussions, you use that same language. When you're writing requirements, you use that common language and just get it embedded so that that's what people think of, that's how they refer to things, and it just makes life simpler, I think.
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting insight. Who do you think is the person who can drive that? Because I like that because it's like back to that beginning in terms of how we get started. We spoke about data analysis and scope and understanding the to be and as is kind of architecture. But that's a key thing to do up front or early on before we start rolling our sleeves up and doing the technical work. It's like, let's agree this set of common language.
Do you know what? That's probably one of the hardest things in the project, right?
Exactly.
Get an agreement on what to call these things. It's just getting, again, we're lucky we've got a strong product owner who's talking to the business and getting that agreement from the top, disseminating down to the services, the service divisions. This is what it's being referred to now. This is the kind of branding, right? The glossary of terms that comes with our brand of the services that we supply to our clients. This is what we're going to call it. And so it just sort of filters down and then feeds into that single view. And so we are all referring to the same thing at the same time, regardless of who we're talking to. But I think it was quite a job to get people to agree on a name for things.
I think it's really interesting to talk about. It almost seems like a really simple thing. The language we're going to call these things. Like, it really does come back to that leadership. It's the overarching leadership of the entire single view project. It's being really clear. This is what the value is, and you've got those disparate parts of the organisation that have got their own systems and their own language or their own things. They've all got to buy in. What you don't want is behind closed doors going, oh yeah, they call that a configuration item. It's one of our virtual machines. No, we've got to call it. You want them to go, no, we're going to use that language from now on, or we understand or be on the positive foot, because you need the whole organisation to be behind this. So that leadership, having a clear idea of the core value. What is the value we're going to get, and why do we want a single view? So going back to the earlier conversation, that value is so important. But then leading the whole organisation to understanding what that value is and how they need to contribute to that, and then not dragging their heels when you say, guys, we've decided that this is the language we want to use going forward. This is really important, or we need you to cleanse your data so that it will feed into our system via your API in the right form. So it's easier for you to do it on your side of the API rather than us do it on this side, or whatever it may be. But you need that buy-in from the entire organisation. So it's really interesting. It seems like a simple thing, language, but it's a massive thing because it's organisational buy-in, really, and it comes down to that great leadership. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. They're the two key things that have come up a few times, aren't they? It's the organisational buy-in, but also that strong leadership. Because if we're making decisions like that, it needs to kind of come down from the top, if you like, and then be
we should definitely recognise it. It's not just so. Greg, you mentioned the leadership within the project space, but actually the value those guys have brought is providing leadership to the team, but also they've influenced the senior stakeholders in the business that this is needed. The implications are X, Y, and Z if doing it versus not doing it. We haven't had sight of business cases, but I'm sure in my previous life there was plenty of we're not moving until we've seen dollar signs in the right place kind of thing. But then the business needs to buy into it, and then the senior execs will then need to go, this is going to happen. And so service division X, Y, and Z, you're all on the hook for delivering into this unified view in X year or Y year. You need to have done it, right? Without that, however strong the project team, the program team is, it kind of won't land.
Yeah. Massive value, I think, in a single view, and there'll be lots of different reasons why there's massive value for any organisation for getting that single view. But there's going to be a lot of effort and involved in actually achieving that. So you've got the massive value, you've got the prize there, but you need to really think about how is it that we're going to achieve that and getting the buy-in. Maybe, I mean, I'm stepping back a little bit. It goes back to how you might start, but maybe one of the ways to start is to think iteratively agile, like, you know, start with a small thing, maybe a proof of concept to be able to demonstrate value to those stakeholders. They go, oh no, this is really good. Yes, I can see exactly how that's going to streamline our business, how that's going to make our customer, service operators, you know, provide a much better experience for our customers, or whatever it may be. So really getting that buy-in across the entire organization to the value is key. And maybe starting small, proof of concept, MVP. You know, these are good ways to get that buy-in. Once you've got the momentum, once you've got the ball rolling, the snowball rolling, then you've got success is ahead of you. But it's really key to be thinking about that from the beginning.
Yeah.
It's a great shout, and yeah, exactly. Again, just as soon as you mentioned proof of concept there, it reminded me that we did exactly that in terms of some of our single sign-on work. Was try and just get some people together in a bit of a sort of, you know, cross-functional squad, if you like, and sort of just spend a sprint on just see what you can do. What can we achieve by trying to integrate into this platform, and then show it back, and that helps get that buy-in then, doesn't it? Because once you're showing something real, it allows you to talk about it. Like, if you actually prioritize this now, this is the sort of stuff we can do. That helps with that buy-in.
And not only that, it also helps you to understand the challenges that you might have to face when implementing for real. How hard is it to integrate this data? You know, what's involved? So it's I think it's very valuable to start small, iterate, get value, get understanding, and then get momentum going.
Yeah, that's bang on. Again, I'm thinking about some of the sort of lessons we've learned from some of those earlier sort of proofs of concept, if you like. It's definitely informed now whenever the council is looking to acquire another third-party solution, because, you know, there's often those systems are there, and an area of the business might find something that they now want to go and purchase. We're definitely more over that acquisition process, if you like, or the procurement process, around you know, how do we get the data out of this system? You know, what does the data look like? How do we get the data out? Talking about API access and documentation up front as part of that conversation with suppliers about possibly acquiring new systems. Obviously, like I've mentioned, some of the pain points we've got where you decide we want to do a single view sort of program, and then you happen to then wrestle systems that have been in place for quite a long time, and working out, have we got access to this data how we expect we probably should? Whereas if we're talking about buying new systems, we can be much more, we need this access to the data in these ways, and we expect it to be even sort of, you know, structured in a certain way, or, you know, and that can be talked about as part of that before the business goes off and buys another system, which generates more data.
Yeah.
We spoke earlier on a little bit about data cleansing, but I've got it still listed down here. I mean, Craig, did you want to? Is there anything else you wanted to talk about the data cleansing bit?
I think we've covered it. I mean, we've got to understand the quality of the data coming from the different sources, and whether it's good, bad, whether it's got duplications in it, what you're going to do with that, with the separate departments that, or, you know, organize that, or how you're going to bring that in. Standardization, deduplication. We've talked a lot about that. Validation. I mean, there is something from a quality assurance point of view. You know, is this got the right data? Does this give us the value we want from the single view, or is it incorrect in any way? And then, I guess there's missing data. We've talked a little bit about that, but also thinking about that for the future as well. When maybe you want to bring in another system, you've acquired another organisation with another system, and you've got to pull that in. But there's also your single view is going to evolve as well, or what you want from the value you want from it is going to evolve, and you might want to enrich the data in some way as well. So you might want other data. There may be a third-party data source that actually, if we can get that brought into our single view, wow, we've got something really great. We can make the experience even greater. So I think we've covered most of the cleansing bits, but there are a few other things to consider. They're similar things that we need to consider, both in the initial implementation, but also ongoing. So as I said, in that sort of devs and DevOps mentality.
Cool. And just before we just move on, sorry, just a reminder. So we've got about 10 minutes left, and we've got a couple of extra topics that we'll continue to talk about to fill that time. But just to encourage anyone who has got any questions in this space that you'd like us to answer, to remember to drop that in the chat, and we'll pick that up as we go. So just a gentle reminder there, and we'll do that. Okay, cool. So user experience, UI, UX, kind of what are the sort of considerations there? How do we make things consistent? Kath, have you got some thoughts around that?
Yeah. So just from the experience we've got right now that we're working on, so we've created a portal with a core set of features that's for a client facing and for an operator facing. But the thing that we found and that we are handling at the moment is that we are enabling other parts of the company, so other divisions and services, to build their own apps within the portal. So the idea is that we provide a core common set of functions, and then the other service divisions have the ability to create apps for their clients that are specific to the very service that they're fulfilling for the client. And so the learning that we've had from that is that you need a design system in there that provides guidelines and components for both designers and developers that will then enable a smooth, consistent experience within the portal for the end user, right? So you don't want with our core set of features in there, so that being user management, viewing your configuration items, viewing your cases, and then for a service third party to what we're doing, to bringing in creating an app within the portal that then shows their information for their service, but in a very different way, right? So that's not going to give a great user experience because they're coming into a portal, they're navigating around, they get the same look and feel and all of these apps, and then suddenly there's one app that looks really different. It's jarring, it's not a good user experience. So what we found is that we've created this kind of design system, which will include things like your brand colors, what fonts you should be using, how the data should be laid out, and those common components that are available to those kind of third-party developers to use. So if you're going to show a table of data, here's a table. It works the same way in every single app. You can filter it, you can sort it. These are the columns. You can move the columns around. You can rename them if you want. Just so that from an end user, they don't know and they don't care that the data is coming from maintained by one set of devs or a different set of devs. For them, it's a consistent experience, right? So the navigation is the same, buttons are in the same place, they're the same shape, they're the same color. 3 popper menus. If you click on the 3 dots, you get a little menu. You know what you're getting, you know how to use it. It's just all about that consistency for the end user. So that's what we've kind of built to a kind of a base guideline with a set of components and all that good stuff in there that basically makes the developer's job easier as well, right? We've already done the hard work. We've built these tables, we've built these widgets, we've built these apps. Here you are, go and use them in your own app and bring in your own data.
Yeah, cool. No, I like that. That's really. And that's important. It's similar to the consistency of language. It's that consistency of user experience, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, exactly.
If you're a customer and you're interacting with what you see as a customer, which is just a different part but the same company, then you expect things to be referred to in the same way, presented in the same sort of way as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. We haven't spoken much, and I know that none of our roles here are like that sort of technical in terms of we're not developers, but in terms of technology choices or technology architecture, I just wondered if there's anything in that space around any thoughts that we've had in terms of what experience have we had in that in your space, Neil and Kath. Is there sort of predefined architecture? Have we helped feed into technology decisions? How do you deliver this?
So we've probably from the client has driven a lot of, so where we are right now, a lot of the technology choices around the sort of macro level of the architecture, whether it's the service desk platforms or the customer source system, right, the CRM system, those are all driven by the client. So we've got a framework that we can then work within. But equally, some of our, the portal elements very much evolved out of a head forwards led set of technical teams. I think that's fair to say. I wasn't here for that, but so I think, the team have helped contribute to certainly that bit, driven some of those early decisions, but then subsequently it were very much like, so we got the configuration items, the integration layer needs to have that. What does that need to look like? How is it going to work? And the team picks that up and runs with it within some fairly loose architectural guidelines around, well, we think it might look, the API needs to look a bit like that, and then team runs with it, reformats it, or whatever they need to do. In terms of the bigger picture, I think, you need that organization. We keep saying this, don't we? We need that centralized organization, decision-making, architecture, business and architecture, to drive the acceptance across the different spokes. And just having, it would be challenging, I think, to just have our portal teams trying to reach out to multiple service divisions to tell them how they need to do their jobs in this space.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it's quite similar, to be fair, in terms of what we've had at the council. There are sort of key enterprise architectural principles that were in place before we sort of started our partnership with the council, but we've also helped definitely feed into a lot of sort of technology decisions more recently around how we present stuff to the customers. There's a lot of standards, especially when we look at working with residents and local authorities, where there's like government standards and of how things are supposed to be presented to residents, but we've also been able to feed into those principles as well. So yeah, quite similar.
I think it's something that Head Forwards can certainly help clients with. We are agnostic when it comes to technologies. You're using .NET. Our other teams are using other technologies, Python, Golang, Java. You name it. We've got lots of different technologies that are being used, and there's the technology landscape, not just choice of coding language, but infrastructure as well. Move to cloud, move to Azure or AWS or wherever, or private cloud, or wherever people want to be hosting their services. We've got at Head Forwards, we've got a lot of experience of that. Sorry, I don't want to do a sales job here. I'm starting sales.
No, carry on, Craig. Do it. Come on.
we have got a lot of experience doing that, and we do provide that sort of advisory and consultancy service. It doesn't mean you have to stick with Head Forwards, but we can certainly help make the right help you to make the right choices. So you being prospective customers, the right choices in terms of that sort of thing, technology choices. And it's a lot about you as an organization. What tools are you using? What developers do you already have in house? What are they using? Where are your systems right now? So both from a sort of a technology choice, infrastructure choice, and architecture, we've certainly got a wealth of experience at Head Forwards, and we can really support clients with that, even if it's just on a consultancy basis, and we leave the clients to get on and do that work, and that's what we can do.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Craig. So we're almost at the end now. I think we've covered a lot around org buy-in, so we won't go over that bit again. I did want to just quickly touch on the sort of under that comms and leadership bit. We have spoken a lot about sort of org buy-in and the need to have strong business leads and leadership in this space backing these sort of projects. Expectation management is something that we've come up against quite a bit, because obviously people want things quickly, and that's where an iterative approach is brilliant, because it allows us to sort of prove concepts and deliver value as early as we can. But undertaking to end up with a single view of your customer, if you're talking about, as I've mentioned, maybe hundreds of different data sets in all sorts of different formats, that we have found that it's a journey. I think you touched on it earlier, it was Kath or Neil, it's never really finished either, because there's always going to be new data sources being spun up in different places, but a key part of that org buy-in and that leadership, I feel, is that expectation management as well around the complexity of these projects and therefore the time and likely associated costs of them. So whilst you can deliver value early, to get that one, that sort of moon, that sort of, what do you call it, the sort of golden vision that you're aiming for, that can take time, and there are sort of things to overcome on the way in terms of the, as I've mentioned, API access data in different formats or not of the right quality. So I think that's important, and that's important for leadership to understand and to actually back as well. I think, because if you're trying to do something in an unrealistic time frame, then
you're going to fail. You've got to be honest about these things.
Yeah.
It's achievable, but yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cool. So the last couple of bits we've got are what would you say a team looks like? So who delivers the single view? What's your agile squad or look like? What sort of roles are we thinking are in it? Craig, have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can do. I appreciate we're over time, so I'll be quick.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
So certainly we talked about leadership. We need to, certainly need, that the sponsor. I think we do need to have some project management there, and change management, and that goes back to the bringing the whole organisation. So from a project leadership, that's important. And then within the core team, I mean, we at Headforwards, our teams are always made up of the same sort of high level roles, but then the detail is in some of the specialism that's required for the given project. So you certainly want a scrum master, business analysts who are there, Kath, the Neils of this world, ensuring that the single view really meets the business value that's being sought, and we don't lose sight of that. So that's really important. User experience, UX people, we make sure that it's user friendly, it's consistent, it meets the needs of those end users. And then you've got the sort of the core technical developers, but you're looking for specialisms within there. I think you need and a lot of this is all around data. It goes back to that earlier point that it's data in, data out. The quality of the single view is going to be about the quality of that data. So data architects, integration specialists, engineers, who are going to extract, transform, load data in, data quality analysis, making sure that data actually is accurate and complete and reliable. Probably some form of database administration experience that can be within your developers or often have that experience, but you've got to you need somebody who's going to manage that central repository if you've got one, the performance of it, the security of it, and the scalability of it. And then data security, so having people who are mindful of that and ensure that we meet any sort of regulations, GDPR, etc., compliance needs, and make sure that privacy measures are all in place. So that's probably your core team. And then you could talk about the operations team. As I said earlier, I think actually, you probably will evolve that team. That's probably the right thing to do. Evolve some of those roles and responsibilities off, or reduce some of them, and then increase more of the support people in there. But in order for your single view to remain valuable ongoing, will require continued effort from all of those specialisms. So I think that's what I said. But I'm open to other people having a view.
You've got that covered, Craig. There, pretty much.
Yeah, no, nicely put. Yeah, good. Cool. So we are just gone over time, but I think that's absolutely fine. So we've got off lightly that no one's dropped any questions in for us as we've been talking. So whilst we're live, I will say though that if anyone does want to connect with certainly myself or any of us on LinkedIn to sort of, if there are any questions, or if anyone wants to kind of more of an informal chat about your single view journey, then we'll be keen to talk to you. So feel free to reach out to us. Yeah, unless there's anything else anyone wanted to add here, then I'll probably thank you guys for your time.
Yeah, thank you for facilitating.
No worries at all. Thank you very much. And yeah,
Cool.
chat to you.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you.